Part 30. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 294. As for the complaints of many netizens, many people immediately responded. Read. Haha, brother, you can see it clearly. I don't understand why these people are also enshrined as gods. Who knows, maybe the higher UPS have their own considerations. Really, how can these people be qualified to join the Pan-Human Alliance? You are just jealous and trying to provoke human peace. We are also members of the Blue Star human race, why are we not qualified to join? Now that we have joined, it means that we are right, and you should all be arrested and imprisoned. That's right, everything we do is for the integration of Blue Star humans. Hey, if haven't you been resisting our salvation, opposing the establishment of the co-prosperity sphere, and opposing the great integration of mankind? Haven't you completed the integration long ago? Ha 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 ha. Which shameless grandson is this, and which dog cage did he escape from? Let's not talk about the debate on the internet. At this time, Yoshino Yukio has spoken again. Before, the Void Breaker was respected, but now, the gods are supreme. And I will be the first god to kill the false god, and my name will be passed down through the ages. While speaking, he also belittled the practitioners of the Void Breaker realm. People who watched his live broadcast knew what he was referring to. After all, before the establishment of the Pan-Human Alliance, except for Shenzhou, no country had the Void Breaker realm. You are really shameless. But you only rely on the blessing of your official position. If you lose the blessing of your official position, what are you? You still advocate the supremacy of gods. Even in the conferred god list, there is no such thing as a god. You are still advocating the supremacy of gods here, and even put yourself above the position of gods. That's right, I don't know if the federal government will sentence such a guy who is so high and above ordinary people. To be honest, there are definitely many people like Yoshino Yukio in the Pan-Human Federation. But no matter what they think in their hearts, most people will not show it. After all, the current humanistic atmosphere, no matter what it is behind the scenes, advocates equality for all and a free nation on the surface. In addition, now that the Pan-Human Federation has just been established, it is the most sensitive time. If you are arrogant and domineering at this time, and show the idea of being above all living beings in your heart, wouldn't it be exposing your handle to the outside world and waiting for the federal government to settle accounts? As for what Yoshino Yukio did, why didn't it cause a reaction from the investiture of the gods and the federal government? Haha, although his words and deeds were arrogant, they did not violate the laws and regulations of the investiture of the gods, so they naturally would not cause a reaction from the investiture of the gods. As for the federal government, haha, at this moment, I don't know how many people are watching his live broadcast. Of course, they are just paying attention, and there is no intention to stop him, just watching him talk nonsense there. What is the difference between these officials who are conferred by the investiture of the gods and the gods in the legends? Except for knowing that these officials will restore their true cultivation realm after leaving their jurisdiction, they know nothing else. And now, isn't it known immediately? Yoshino Yukio came to the divine light barrier, and pulled out the knife with a clang. Just a move of his wrist turned into a magnificent knife light, like a mountain of knives. Wow, my male god is so powerful, any god like this, I'm afraid he will be killed in one blow. Tisk tisk tisk, although I look down on his style of doing things, I have to say that he is still quite capable. Looking at the bullet screen on the live broadcast device, Yoshino Yukio's mouth curled slightly, and the knife light in his hand changed, turning into a 1,000-foot knife light, and the sharp knife intent rushed straight into the sky, directly slashing towards the divine light barrier in front of him. Ka! Where the knife light passed, a deep space crack appeared, extending straight towards the divine light barrier. Swish! Just like a sharp blade cutting through paper, the divine light barrier was easily cut open. Heh, that's it, this so-called God, is this the power? Yoshino Yukio sneered disdainfully, and then strode forward, directly passed through the cut divine light barrier, and stepped into the area covered by the power of the gods. At the same time, a vast voice came from the direction of Higashi Shimahara Kyoto. Conferring the title, Yoshino Yukio is the master of Hongfu Mountain. Instantly, boundless divine light spread and turned into a pillar of light that shot straight at Yoshino Yukio. Buzz. Originally, Yoshino Yukio's aura began to decline rapidly because he entered Hongfu Mountain. At this moment, a vast divine power wave suddenly rose again and quickly spread to the entire fusion. Changing the surrounding environment inch by inch, the aura of the conferred god list began to penetrate rapidly and gradually took over the rules here. However, at the same moment, the divine light that originally covered the entire fusion suddenly shone brightly, and the crack that was broken was also closing rapidly. The world that was originally permeated by the aura of the conferred god list and was changing was completely cleared in just a moment and turned back to its previous state. Boom! Yoshino Yukio's pupils suddenly shrank, and more powerful divine power spread out, and at the same time, he attracted stronger divine power and collided with the sudden large amount of divine light. Then, well, there was no more. Yoshino Yukio's burst of divine power was like a brilliant firework, flashing away. The divine power beam that had originally entered the divine light barrier was also cut off in an instant. After losing its target, it turned into dots of divine light and dissipated. Yoshino Yukio was left standing alone in the divine light barrier. There was no more divine power fluctuation around him, only a circle of spiritual light, spreading and covering several meters around him, looking so pitiful and helpless. Good guy, seeing how arrogant and overbearing he is, I thought he was going to kill everyone. Well, killing everyone is impossible, he is going to be dead. I am so amused, this is your male god. From the looks of it, it seems that he has just reached the realm of heaven and man. Look at that bragging just now, the strong man who broke the void is nothing in his eyes. But what about now? Haha. It's really funny. It's just relying on the blessing of the conferred god list. Why are you so arrogant? You are directly discouraged now. To say that he is vulnerable is to praise him. As for these mocking words, those who had previously advocated Yoshino Yukio were all silent at this time. Even if someone refuted, they were not confident enough. The current situation is clear at a glance, what can be refuted? Before, his strength was strong, and he had some capital for arrogance, but at this time, without the blessing of the official position, he was really nothing. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 295. After the divine power dissipated, Yoshino Yukio was stunned for a moment, then he suddenly came to his senses and turned around to run away, hoping to escape the range of the divine light. Read. However, as soon as his figure rose, he was immediately enveloped by an invisible pressure. Bang! Without any resistance at all, Yoshino Yukio was pressed to the ground. No matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't even lift his head. Mercy, mercy! Yoshino Yukio turned his face reluctantly, ignoring the dust on his face and the blood flowing from his mouth and nose, and immediately began to beg for mercy loudly. Good fellow, he was full of contempt for others before, but he fell to the ground without even seeing the other person's face. When villains succeed, they are rampant, but after losing the capital of their success, they are like a dog shaking its tail and begging for mercy. What nonsense is the person above talking about? How can you insult a dog casually? Seeing Yoshino Yukio begging for mercy in a desperate manner, with no backbone at all, the live broadcast audience couldn't help but mock him. Buzz. With a buzzing sound in the space, above Yoshino Yukio, the space began to fluctuate and twist slightly, and a figure with 8-color light appeared twisted on it. Seeing this scene, everyone held their breath slightly. Did this god really appear? Is it because they saw Yoshino Yukio begging for mercy and have punished him, so they are going to let him go now? However, how could things be so simple? You have already hit him at the doorstep. No matter who comes, they will not let it go so easily. What's more, this is a god, and his dignity as a god is even more impossible to let go. Sure enough, this god with 8 colors of light around him, after showing his figure, completely ignored Yoshino Yukio below, and looked outside the divine light barrier. Facing this gaze, even if they were watching through the live broadcast screen, everyone still felt a chill all over their bodies, and felt that they were completely seen through. The crowd watching through the live broadcast was like this, let alone the people on the scene. Da-da-da. The crisp knocking sound was transmitted to everyone's ears through the live broadcast equipment. Although everyone could not see the specific situation, they could roughly imagine it. This was obviously the assistant holding the live broadcast equipment. Facing the might of the god's gaze, he was already directly frightened and his teeth were trembling. Even the live broadcast screen was shaking violently. However, there was nothing to despise about this. After all, facing the gods, no matter who it was, no one dared to guarantee that they would perform better than him. In fact, it was already very good that he didn't pee his pants directly. This is what everyone thought. The real fact is that the photographer, who was shaking like a sieve, had his eyes wide open and his feet weak, and he might kneel down at any time. A watermark slowly appeared at the root of his thigh and quickly spread downwards, with a smell of stench. Although the god who showed his figure could not smell the smell through the divine light barrier, he could definitely see the watermark with his eyes. Instinctively, he frowned deeply, and his displeasure was undoubtedly revealed. Even the divine light around him was slightly fluctuating. Although people outside could not see his facial expression. However, everyone felt a chill in their bodies for some reason, knowing that the god had begun to be unhappy. In the next moment, the divine light around the god turned, and suddenly it surged and turned into a size of 10,000 feet. Although it was still shrouded in the divine light, everyone could already roughly see the size of the god. The slender figure meandered in the air, and 8 huge and ferocious heads were staring at the outside of the divine light barrier. Is this Yamata no Orakai? Good fellow, this has provoked a big boss. Tisk. He went to Hungfu Mountain, didn't he just want to kill Yamata, the false god? Hee, it's a pity that he didn't even see the face of the person, and he fell to the street directly. But, what does this Yamata no Orakai mean? Why didn't he kill Yoshino Yukio? Why is he looking at the outside of the divine light barrier? Is he dissatisfied with the provocation of humans and wants to go to war with Dongdao? Well, it's not impossible. Wait quietly, the battle has begun. Well, if they start a war now, isn't it equivalent to going to war with all humans on Blue Star? After all, haven't humans formed a pan-human alliance? No, the human alliance has not yet been completely integrated, isn't it still autonomous in each district? This East Island? Well, isn't this their internal affairs? Hiss roar. Just as many netizens were discussing, the 8 heads of Yamata no Orakai roared together, and divine lights of different colors spewed out from the mouths of its 8 heads, each containing a rule. Buzz. The magnificent and condensed divine power spewed out, and the space in front of Yamata was distorted layer by layer. And, after the divine light was ejected, there were rules wandering in it, intertwining and connecting with each other, forming a large network of rules, and the 8 light columns merged into one in an instant, turning into a light column that combined the attributes of various rules. This newly formed divine power beam not only did not repel each other because of different rules, but complemented and amplified each other, making the energy level of this divine power beam continue to rise. It sounds complicated, but in fact it was just a moment. Everyone only felt a flash of light, and the live broadcast screen had turned black. Obviously, the live broadcast equipment has been completely destroyed. As for the photographer who was scared to death, Yamata no Orokai would not be kind enough to leave him alone, so he was naturally turned into ashes and dissipated together. Is Yamata no Orokai really fighting? Will this battle between gods affect the entire blue planet? I hope the Alliance government can handle it. This shouldn't affect the entire blue planet, but it's hard to say about East Island and the coastal cities in its surrounding areas. Yeah, like those cities in the east of Shenzhou. Well, the biggest impact should be on the cold wave. Hey, it should be. However, the people watching the live broadcast cannot see the situation on the scene, but the leaders of the major forces can continue to observe the situation there through satellites and other means. Even those who work at the Pan-Human Alliance headquarters, to a certain extent, should be in charge of the management of all areas where the Pan-Human Alliance is located, and can even use the conferred God list to map what is happening here. The unified divine power light column, like a high-energy laser ray, burst out of the divine light barrier, and it can be said that it destroyed mountains and cut mountains, split rivers, and boiled seas along the way. The photographer and live broadcast equipment nearby did not even touch the divine light column, and they turned into ashes and dissipated in the air. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 296. However, the moment the Yamata no Orokai's attack broke out of the divine light barrier, the entire world where Dongdaeyo was located seemed to have received some kind of stimulation. The whole world trembled slightly, with wisps of brilliance splashing out, and in just an instant, it filled the entire world. A series of looming rules emerged, crisscrossing each other, forming a huge net, and a terrifying force of suppression gathered, shrouding the attack from the Yamata no Orokai. Buzz. The space trembled slightly, and the Yamata no Orokai's attack collided with the suppressive force. It did not erupt into a terrifying shockwave as everyone imagined. However, this does not mean that the power of the two is less. From the slightly trembling, twisting, and even constantly collapsing space, as well as the rapidly disintegrating mountains and earth, we can know how terrifying the power of the two collides. The most important reason for this situation is that the power of rules bursting out from the East Island world is not used to attack, but to suppress and neutralize attacks. In other words, the suppressive force of rules bursting out from the East Island world is not a head-on confrontation with the attack from the Yamata no Orokai. Instead, it uses the rules of heaven and earth to suppress the rules within it, and from the side, dispels the energy intensity contained in it, in order to achieve the purpose of reducing its damage to heaven and earth. However, it is obvious that the power of rules that the entire East Island can mobilize cannot completely suppress the attack from the Yamata no Orokai. After all, although in theory, any attack that does not exceed the intensity of Blue Star's essential rules can be easily suppressed. However, that was when the entire Blue Star was covered by the rules of the conferred gods list and completely integrated into one body. It would naturally be easy to suppress those attacks whose intensity did not exceed the upper limit. However, the fact is that there are many places on Blue Star that are occupied by the above-ground divine kingdoms of those gods, which are isolated from the list of gods and the complete integration of Blue Star rules. This also resulted in the list of gods not being fully activated and controlling all the rules of Blue Star. The power of rules that it can mobilize is even greater than the power of humanity to leverage the rules of heaven and earth. However, the current Pan-Human Alliance is also not completely integrated into one. It is basically a state of autonomy for each region. Under this situation, the only humanitarian power that Dongdaeyo, the original country and current region, can mobilize is the humanitarian power of Dongdaeyo. Under such circumstances, the rules that the power of humanity can leverage through the conferred gods list are naturally incomplete. If it is a spirit with low strength, it can naturally be easily suppressed. But facing a god like Yamata no Orokai, who is also an extremely famous god in the East Island, it seems to be a little weak. Although, it can still suppress and reduce some of its power. However, the damage it can cause is still extremely shocking. Not to mention the extremely close live broadcast equipment and photographers. But everything on the path attacked by the pillar of divine power was completely destroyed. Whether it was mountains, rivers, or living cities that blocked the road, they were all destroyed. This magnificent beam of divine power directly penetrated half of the East Island and reached the sea outside the East Island. Only then did it gradually dissipate under the suppression of the rules of heaven and earth. Looking at the straight passage from Hungfu Mountain to the outer sea, everyone who watched the scene was collectively speechless. Well, doesn't it mean that after the power of the god list covers the whole world, it can leverage the rules of the world of Blue Star and suppress all gods that do not exceed the upper limit? But, what is the situation? What else could it be? It must be that Yamata no Orokai's attack has exceeded the upper limit of Blue Star rules. That's not necessarily the case. As for the power of Yamata no Orokai, which exceeds the upper limit of Blue Star rules, some people agree, and naturally some people hold different opinions. Oh, what do you say? It was said before that if the power of the god list covers the whole world, it can suppress gods that do not exceed the upper limit. However, the current power of the god list does not cover the whole world. There are many places in Blue Star that are blocked by the power of the gods. They are basically equivalent to the above-ground divine kingdoms of the gods, but they are not covered by the power of the god list. That's true. After everyone finished their discussion, they turned their doubtful eyes to Alliance Prime Minister Xuanhuan, waiting for his answer. Indeed, the current list of gods does not integrate the rules of the entire Blue Star. It is inevitably a bit difficult to suppress the power of those gods. But even so, basically, most of the gods have no way to escape the suppression of the rules of the gods list. Theoretically speaking, with the power of Yamata no Orokai's personality, he should not be able to compete with the power of the rules of the East Island world. I just didn't expect that the 8 heads of the Yamata no Orokai would be responsible for 8 different rules. Moreover, after the 8 rules are unified, they will complement each other to a certain extent, causing the energy level of their attacks to rise rapidly again, directly breaking through the suppression of the current rules of heaven and earth on the East Island. Fortunately, even those top gods may be able to break through the upper limit of the current rules of heaven and earth with the power they can exert. However, they will also be greatly restricted. Otherwise. After a moment of silence, Xuanhuan slowly explained. At the end of his speech, Xuanhuan's eyes even glanced at the former Prime Minister of Dongdao, now the Director of Dongdao. The meaning is self-evident. If it weren't for the conferred god list prying the suppression and restraint of the rules of heaven and earth, the entire Dongdao might have been truly divided into 2, or even collapsed and completely broken apart. Unlike now, although a long passage has been opened. But that is at most equivalent to digging a ditch from Hungfu Mountain to the coast. After all, the Yamata no Orokai did not attack the land directly, but launched the attack 100 meters above the ground. The destruction suffered on the ground was just the aftermath of the attack. Obviously, the Yamata no Orokai still had some concerns. For the scene of the conferred god list conferring officials at the beginning of the establishment of the Pan-Human Alliance, it left a very deep impression in the hearts of the gods. That might is definitely not something that a single god can contend with. Even those powerful gods are only as powerful as the might of the investiture of the gods when it is fully unleashed. Although it is not so easy to use the investiture of the gods with all its might, it requires the consent of almost all humans. And considering the current situation of the Pan-Human Alliance and the division of power in each region, that is almost impossible. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 297. It was because of these circumstances that Yamata no Orokai only launched one attack and had no intention of continuing to attack. Otherwise, with the power Yamata no Orokai now showed, even if it was suppressed and restrained by the rules of heaven and earth, it would be enough to turn East Island upside down. Not to mention killing all the humans on it, it would be enough to cause heavy casualties, countless losses, and even complete collapse of East Island. It was because he was worried that his wanton destruction on East Island would cause all humans to unite against the enemy, and he would mobilize the power of the conferred god list to suppress him, so he did not continue to launch attacks. After all, sympathy for one's own kind, even if Shenzhou, which had a feud with East Island, might be secretly happy in his heart when East Island suffered destruction and countless losses. However, when the humans on East Island suffered heavy casualties and were in danger of extinction, even if there was a feud, I am afraid that they would have the mentality of sympathy for one's own kind. Moreover, even if we don't talk about other things, just the distance between the two sides is enough to make everyone worry. Will the Yamata no Orokai attack the coastal cities of Shenzhou when it goes crazy? In addition, the Yamata no Orokai is an alien god. Seeing humans being slaughtered by aliens, how could anyone, except those with mental abnormalities, not be touched at all? By then, the Yamata no Orokai caused resistance from all mankind. With the unity of all mankind, the Pan-Human Alliance can naturally mobilize the full power of the conferred god list easily. After seeing the full power of the conferred god list at the beginning, the Yamata no Orokai was unwilling to confront the Pan-Human Alliance that controlled the conferred god list head-on. Therefore, the Yamata no Orokai launched an attack, expressed its dissatisfaction with being provoked, and retaliated. It did not launch a follow-up attack again, but just stared coldly at the outside of the divine light barrier for a while, and then meandered back. Everyone who saw the scene looked at each other in bewilderment, and was a little at a loss for a moment. What should they do now? This is the first contact and collision between the Pan-Human Federation and those gods since its establishment. If it is just lightly exposed without any action, then the Pan-Human Federation, which was not very united to begin with, will inevitably become more centrifugal. However, if a strong intervention is made with great fanfare, it is actually somewhat untenable. After all, this is the Yamata no Orokai who was provoked by Yoshino Yukio, who was still lying there. You are already thinking of killing him, and he is forced to fight back, which seems reasonable. Isn't there legitimate defense in the laws of humans? As for Hongfu Mountain, it was originally part of Dongdao. Well, although it is covered by the Yamata no Orokai's divine power rules, he has never prohibited anyone from entering. No matter ordinary people or those who have obtained official positions, they can enter it. As for whether they dare to enter, that is another matter. Anyway, since the divine shield rose from Hongfu Mountain, which was originally a tourist attraction, has become sparsely populated. Even many of the original residents have moved out. Except for those fanatical believers who worship Yamata no Orokai and regard it as a spiritual belief, not many people are willing to enter that dangerous place. Of course, although Yamata no Orokai does not prohibit humans from entering, if you shout and kill, then the lying Yoshino Yukio will be a clear example. We must fight. After a long silence, Ren Huang took the lead and broke the dull and depressing atmosphere around him. No matter how much Yoshino Yukio did, he should be punished. But that's his own problem. And those ordinary people who died under the attack of Yamata no Orokai are all innocent. Yamata no Orokai should never attack indiscriminately. Since he hurt innocent people in the Federation, he should pay the corresponding price. Ren Wang's eyes flashed with a sharp light, and he looked at everyone domineeringly. Facing Ren Wang's domineering eyes, everyone lowered their head slightly and dared not look directly at him. However, despite this, everyone was hesitant to have a direct conflict with Yamata no Orokai. However, Yamata no Orokai is not easy to deal with. Anyway, The area that was destroyed was the East Island area, not the area under their jurisdiction. They are not willing to sacrifice their own strength for the ordinary people who have died in East Island. Even the highest leader of the East Island area is not very willing to go to war. After all, looking at the appearance of Yamata no Orokai, it seems that he has no intention of attacking again. As for those who died, they are already dead anyway, so why waste the country's strength? Humph. Looking at the performance of the crowd, Xuanhuan couldn't help but snorted coldly. A group of bullies who only bully the weak and fear the strong, sooner or later they will all be replaced. You don't have to say anything, this battle must be fought, you don't have to do it. But when it is necessary to mobilize the power of humanity, you must fully cooperate, and you must not slack off at all, otherwise you know the consequences. Listening to Renwang's cold words and the strong pressure from the first person, everyone's body couldn't help shaking. Although after entering the conferred god list, everyone's strength realm has undergone earth-shaking changes, even among the gods, they are not considered weak. But when facing Renhuang, it became even more unbearable, like a mouse meeting a cat. In fact, as the general director of the Pan-Human Alliance, Renhuang has the most powerful blessing among the gods. The current level of strength is equivalent to a top-notch god who may break through and become a true immortal at any time. Of course, when Renhuang's true cultivation level has not reached the peak of Hideo, there is absolutely no possibility of him making a breakthrough. But even so, the strength it can exert now is enough to fight against any god within the scope of the list of gods. This is also his confidence to attack Yamata no Orokai. If necessary, he will take action himself. Not to mention, he is also the controller of the conferred gods list. Although he does not have the right to live, kill, or seize the people on the conferred gods list. However, there is also a natural suppression of personality. This is the main reason why everyone is trembling and afraid to make mistakes when facing Renhuang. Of course, that's all. As for going further, that's impossible. Otherwise, when it comes to facing the Yamata no Orokai, Renhuang can settle it with one word. Instead of like now, when faced with Renhuang's proposal to start a war, they all hesitated. Although they did not reject it explicitly, they remained silent and silently opposed. It was impossible to start a war anyway. This can only make Renhuang retreat and do the next best thing, but let them fully cooperate and assist the Feng Shenbang to mobilize the power of humanity. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 298. Time flies, and soon more than 10 days have passed. Read. For Yamata no Orokai, Yoshino Yukio, and the Strait Passage destroyed by the attack, the heat not only did not dissipate, but intensified. According to subsequent statistics, the number of people who died in that attack reached over 1 million, and among the ruins of several cities along the way, death penalty areas where resentful spirits gathered were formed. As for other losses, they are countless. When the Pan-Human Alliance government did not announce its next plan, more and more people began to hold demonstrations, calling on the alliance government to sanction Yamata no Orokai and give an explanation to the people who died innocently. As for whether the Pan-Human Alliance can punish Yamata no Orokai, they don't know and don't care. But the Pan-Human Alliance said nothing, which aroused their dissatisfaction. It is said that the Pan-Human Alliance was established in response to the Blue Star Crisis. Now that Yamata no Orokai is killing civilians, how can the Pan-Human Alliance do nothing? At this moment, even those who opposed the establishment of the Pan-Human Alliance temporarily stopped their actions. Everyone's eyes and attention are all focused on the Pan-Human Alliance government, waiting for the Pan-Human Alliance's response. However, as time went by, the Pan-Human Alliance never said anything, and the people at the bottom began to become restless, and the demonstrations became more and more intense. On the contrary, the previous voices that resisted the establishment of the Pan-Human Alliance began to gradually disappear. It was at this time that the Pan-Human Alliance finally issued a statement that the Pan-Human Alliance would impose sanctions on Yamata no Orokai for killing innocent humans. As the statement was issued, it was broadcast live on the global network. A vast, majestic army lined up neatly along the coast of China. The momentum of each other is intertwined, and the military momentum and official positions are connected, covering the entire army in a layer of bright divine light. However, although the divine light is bright, it is because it is adjusted and mapped through the conferred gods list and then broadcast in real time. This allowed everyone to clearly see the appearance of this army. Their military uniforms were neat and tidy, their postures were as tall as a mountain, their expressions were cold and solemn, and their bodies were full of divine light, making them look like heavenly soldiers and generals. This army is a secret force that China has secretly formed since the beginning of its spiritual recovery. All of them are accomplished masters in cultivation. Especially after receiving the blessing from the conferred god list, everyone has made rapid progress. As of now, in this army, even the true cultivation level of the most ordinary soldiers is already at the pinnacle of the field, and may break into the realm of breaking the void at any time. Among them, the army generals have already reached the realm of breaking the void. Several of them have already broken through the realm of breaking the void and reached the next great realm, the first realm among the 5 realms of immortality. Internal photo realm. This means that human cultivation has reached another level, completely different from before. The so-called inner reflection, seeing the true self, and living for 5,000 years is a true portrayal of this state. Human civilization has only been recorded for a few years, and the oldest Chinese civilization is only over 5,000 years old. The first realm of immortality can already have a lifespan of 5,000 years. But this time, the reason why Ren Huang and the others dispatched these troops was because they had been hiding. In addition to their powerful strength and the blessing of the gods list, they are far beyond what Yukio Yoshino and his like can compare to. With everyone working together, they can definitely fight against the Yamata no Orokai, or even suppress it. There are 2 other reasons. One is that with the current power of China, there is no need to deliberately conceal it, and it can also show the power of China and make some people no longer dare to make small moves. As time goes by, it will naturally be possible to slowly integrate the power of the entire Blue Star human race. Another reason is military training. Many of these people's cultivation has reached a bottleneck. I believe that after this battle, they can not only test the combat effectiveness of this training unit, but also its various shortcomings in actual combat. It can also enable most of them to break through the current bottleneck of their realm and reach a higher realm. By then, the Shenzhou region and the Pan-Human Alliance will have a super force with all members of the real cultivation level broken, and with the blessing of the gods list, all members will be at the advanced god level. For the sake of the Pan-Human Alliance, and for the people who were innocently killed, let's go. There was not much nonsense, just a few brief remarks, and under the order of the leader, the entire army took action quickly. The bright divine light circulated and quickly gathered under the entire army. The divine light condensed and turned into a huge auspicious cloud blooming with bright divine light, lifting the entire army into the sky quickly. Then, this auspicious cloud of divine light carried everyone and quickly headed towards the East Island. And this scene was watched by almost the entire Blue Star human race, with longing and expectation in their eyes. And the people of China were even more excited. This was their army of China. As expected of a warrior from my great state, I don't think any warrior is weaker than Yukio Yoshino. No, 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 not only is he not weak, anyone can surpass him, okay. How did you see it? Why didn't I see it? Well, use your heart, you have to look carefully. Of course, such words are simply nonsense. Whether it is Yoshino Yukio or the soldiers of this unit, the strength they can exert is the level of gods, far beyond the perception of ordinary people. As long as they don't really fight, ordinary people can't tell their strength. Although they are saying the truth, when they say this, they are just guessing according to their inner bias. Although Shenzhou is some distance away from Dongdao, the speed of the divine light and auspicious clouds is even faster. In just a few minutes, everyone has arrived above Dongdao. What a fast speed! With their speed, I'm afraid they can quickly reach any corner of the blue star. Seeing such remarks, ordinary people still don't feel much, but those who keep making small moves behind the scenes feel cold in their hearts. The Pan-Human Alliance has such a team. Once the little tricks they have come up with are exposed, there is no possibility of escape. Not only them, but also the senior leaders of the major forces who have joined the Pan-Human Alliance are also discouraged at this moment. When they joined the Pan-Human Alliance before, they proposed the autonomy of each district. Was it a bit taken for granted? With the military force shown by Shenzhou now, how long can they last? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 299. After arriving above the East Island, the troops began to change their formation quickly, and the divine light surrounding them also changed with it. Strands of faint purple light gathered in the auspicious clouds below the crowd. And as time passed, the strands of purple light gradually became denser, and a trace of lightning flashed. When everyone arrived near Hungfu Mountain, the auspicious cloud under their feet had turned into a thundercloud covered with purple thunder. And the Yamata no Orakai was already above Hungfu Mountain, waiting for everyone to arrive. The huge snake body was winding, and the 8 ferocious snake heads revealed a chill, staring at the people who were coming quickly. The huge pressure was pervasive, and the fanatics living under Hungfu Mountain knelt on the ground, looking at the Yamata no Orakai in the sky with fanatical eyes. It was so elegant and beautiful, wild and domineering. In addition to these fanatics, there was another person in the area of Hungfu Mountain. Yoshino Yukio, who was lying on the ground, felt the sudden surge of power on his body, and couldn't help but groan, and strands of blood flowed out from his mouth and nose. Although he lost the blessing of the list of gods, he was still a heavenly being after all. In addition, his body had experienced the baptism of divine power after all, and even if he lost the blessing of his official position, his body's vitality was still extremely strong. So, although several days had passed, he not only had no food or water, but also carried the terrifying pressure of the gods. Even moving his body slightly was extremely difficult, and as for standing up, it was even more impossible. However, Yoshino Yukio still maintained a strong vitality, with no signs of death. It was just that Yoshino Yukio's expression was numb and his eyes were slightly dull. Obviously, the experience of the past few days had made his mind collapse. Only the sudden change today made him look slightly sober. Looking at the large divine light looming in the sky, he couldn't help but show a touch of excitement. "Save me!" A voice as thin as a mosquito came out of Yoshino Yukio's mouth. Unfortunately, his voice was too weak and could not be heard far away. It had already dissipated in the wind. Of course, even if the people in the sky could hear it, I'm afraid no one would pay attention to him. This kind of guy who is arrogant and courting death when he is successful, let him die. Anyway, even if he can escape, he can't escape the fate of death. The millions of people who died in Dongdao are still waiting for someone to take the blame. Anyway, the director of Dongdao is impossible to take the blame for him. As for many people in the federal government, they acquiesced to his actions. How could this happen? They just didn't react. After the two sides met, they looked at each other coldly for a while, and then began to attack each other. Regardless of the purpose, they had to fight. Fists and strength were the only criteria for measuring the results. In this case, what else was there to say? Let's fight first and then talk about other things. 8 giant mouths spewed out, and the divine power light columns collided and intertwined, merging into a more condensed and magnificent divine power light column, shooting towards the people who came to control the Sea of Thunder. The attack was the same as before, twisting layers of void and piercing through the space. In just a moment, it had arrived in front of everyone. Facing the attack of Yamata no Orokai, everyone was also unwilling to be outdone. Countless thunders gathered, and an equally magnificent purple lightning column collided fiercely with the divine power light column emitted by Yamata no Orokai. Boom! Crack, crack, crack. The void at the collision point was violently twisted, and the space seemed as fragile as thin paper, and was directly torn apart by the spreading aftermath. One after another, dark and hideous space cracks continued to spread in all directions. The mountains and rivers below were slightly touched by the aftermath of the attack, and they collapsed and disintegrated. In the blink of an eye, they were swallowed by the space cracks, leaving only hideous gullies in the original place. At the same time, the whole world was slightly shaken, and there were faint rays of light flowing. A large network of rules loomed, constantly repairing the space cracks, stabilizing and suppressing the turbulent world. In the end, the two sides fought to a draw, and neither could do anything to the other. The attacks they launched all slowly dissipated. The universe has the way, the law of heaven. The image of the earth. A loud shout came out from the army formation. And when the voice fell, the people in the army formation had already begun to move quickly and orderly, and the brilliant divine light rushed into the sky and quickly merged into one. The whole world was slightly shaken, and all the divine lights merged into one, turning into a divine light that penetrated the sky and the earth, and a huge giant stood inside. A halo of divine power hung behind his head, and powerful forces surged out, constantly merging into the giant's body, providing it with powerful support. That was the power of humanity mobilized by the conferred God list, blessing everyone. Ha! The giant exhaled, like a sudden appearance of wind and thunder, sweeping across hundreds of miles around, and then gradually faded away. If it weren't for the already activated great net of heaven and earth rules, which firmly suppressed the heaven and earth, it could even affect the entire East Island. God killer! A vast and deep shout came out from the giant's mouth. The next moment, the giant put his hands together, forming a double-edged giant axe between his palms, and slashed hard at the divine light shield in front of him. Gather your strength! Yamata no Orokai roared, and the rules of heaven and earth within the entire divine power barrier instantly boiled, and huge streams of power of rules submerged into the body of Yamata no Orokai in an instant. Puff! Puff! Yoshino Yukio, who was lying on the ground, was rushed by the force of the rules and spurted out blood again. His whole body instantly became sluggish, and there was no trace of blood on his face anymore. He became dying and could die at any time. It's a pity that now everyone's energy is focused on both sides of the war, and no one pays attention to him at all. Rumble. Blessed by the huge power of rules, Yamata no Orokai's body skyrocketed again, almost filling all areas within the entire divine power barrier. Standing at the foot of Hungfu Mountain and looking up, I can no longer see any light in the sky. Only the dazzling light from the sky fills my eyes, and a huge snake body is looming. Gun of rules. Following Yamata no Orokai's thoughts, a dazzling divine spear appeared in front of it. Rules and runes circulated. The rules of heaven and earth of the entire small world, including its core 8 natal rules, were all added to the gun body. Endless the power of rules is integrated into it. Following the control of Yamata no Orokai, the spear containing the power of endless rules instantly broke through the space and pierced the giant outside the divine power barrier. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 300. Bang. Bang. The attacks of both sides collided with each other again, and a more violent shockwave spread out. There was an infinite brilliance blooming, illuminating most of the blue planet, as if a scorching sun suddenly appeared above the east island. And around the sun, a circle of black halo was smudged. Or it could be said to be a black crack. It was the violent force generated by the collision of the two sides, which directly tore the surrounding space and revealed a circle of dark space cracks. However, under the illumination of the divine sun, a circle of halo similar to the boundary of a black hole appeared. As for why, since the area around the collision of the two forces was already full of dark space cracks, why was there still light shining through? That was naturally because the brilliance of the divine power would not be too affected by the pure laws of physics. Don't say that this is just an ordinary space crack. I'm afraid that even if it is a real black hole, the divine power brilliance can still see through it. At this moment, everyone was shocked by the sudden dazzling light, and instinctively turned to the direction where the light came from. Unfortunately, even though the humans on Blue Star have practiced for several years and their physical fitness has been greatly improved, they can't open their eyes at all. Even with their eyes closed, they can still feel the strong light, which makes everyone feel extremely uncomfortable. They quickly turn around and no longer pay attention to the source of the light. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that the spreading divine light was constantly suppressed and weakened by the rules of heaven and earth, everyone would have been blinded and unable to see anything in the moment they watched. They would even be evaporated by the divine light and turned into a wisp of dust between heaven and earth. When the shock waves generated by the attacks of both sides spread outward, the first to bear the brunt was not others, but the divine light shield constructed with the power of the Yamata no Orokai. In an instant, the divine light shield began to fluctuate violently, and circles of water like ripples rippled rapidly. Moreover, in just a few breaths, the entire divine power shield was shattered, turning into a divine power brilliance and dissipating. Then, the land and mountains below began to tremble violently, breaking inch by inch from the top of the mountain to the bottom. Then, the broken rocks were completely annihilated in mid-air by the shock wave that followed. While Yamata no Orokai was concentrating on the enemy, Yoshino Yukio felt his body lighten at the moment the divine power shield was broken. This is. I can get up, the punishment of Yamata no Orokai is over. Ha ha ha. I survived. For a moment, Yoshino Yukio couldn't help laughing excitedly. However, his name for Yamata no Orokai has also undergone earth-shaking changes. No longer talking about false gods, but directly calling him the great god, for fear of attracting the suppression and punishment of Yamata no Orokai again. In an instant, Yoshino Yukio wanted to get up and get away from here. However, when he looked up with joy, he froze in his place, his face turned pale, and his eyes were filled with deep despair. The divine power shield in front of him had been completely shattered, leaving only a few fragments of divine power flying all over the sky, which looked so colorful and gorgeous. A mountain not far away was starting from the top of the mountain, breaking and annihilating inch by inch at a very fast speed. Almost in the blink of an eye, the not-so-small mountain had disappeared. Of course, this was not enough to make Yoshino Yukio despair. What really made him despair was that this kind of collapse and shattering did not stop there, but spread rapidly, and soon it was close to the ground. Then, Yoshino Yukio only felt his body sink and lighten, and then he completely lost all consciousness, and his whole body had turned into flying ash and dissipated. At the same time, the golden conferred god list suspended above the headquarters hall of the Pan-Human Alliance suddenly flashed with a golden light. Immediately, all the people who were still immersed in the image reflected by the conferred god list seemed to have sensed something and instantly looked at the conferred god list above. After a burst of golden light, a name quietly jumped on the conferred god list. Red Rich Mountain Master, Yoshino Yukio. This is. What happened? Is this guy still alive? I just seemed to see that guy seemed to have turned into ashes, deader than dead. What is this? Just when everyone was surprised, they saw Yoshino Yukio's name suddenly flashed a golden light and shot straight into the air. In a breath, the golden light converged, and Yoshino Yukio's figure slowly appeared in front of everyone. Hey! Isn't this guy dead? Did I see it wrong just now? Impossible, absolutely impossible, I saw it clearly at that time, it was indeed Yoshino Yukio, and the aftermath of the attack completely turned him into ashes. Ahem. Just as everyone was discussing in amazement, Xuanhuan, who was sitting at the top, coughed lightly, attracting everyone's attention, and then slowly spoke. Yoshino Yukio is indeed dead just now, but have you forgotten that the gods enthroned in this list of gods are immortal? As long as the investiture of the gods list is not broken, the gods who are conferred by it can, with the help of the investiture of the gods list, use the breath and true spirit left on it as a guide to reshape their bodies and souls and revive again. After listening to Xuanhuan's explanation, everyone suddenly understood and felt relieved. Before, they always thought that the divine power and immortality granted by the investiture of the gods list could only take effect within the scope of the investiture of the gods list. But now they know that no matter where you are, as long as you have signed the investiture of the gods list, although your divine power and official position may be suppressed. However, after your death, you can be resurrected through the power of the investiture of the gods list. That is to say, as long as the investiture of the gods list is still there, anyone who is truly those who are on the list of spirits can be considered immortal. No matter when and where, as long as they die, they can be resurrected. Of course, this can only be done after you die. If you are suppressed and sealed by someone, like Yoshino Yukio before, then you can't be resurrected through the list of gods. But even so, it is enough to make everyone present have fewer concerns. As long as they don't die, everything else is easy to say. Isn't it just a war with the gods? What's there to hesitate about? Fight? Must fight? Anyway, they are now like those gods, they can be resurrected infinitely, and they may even be stronger. After all, if those gods are really killed, they will really die. But they are different. As long as the list of gods is not broken, they are immortal. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 301. Yoshino Yukio opened his eyes and looked around blankly, then he seemed to remember something and immediately searched his body. Read. After confirming that he was really intact, Yoshino Yukio really looked around. And this look was not a big deal. Yoshino Yukio found that he was actually in a hall, and many big figures he had met or had not met were all staring at him. Hello, sir. Yoshino Yukio fell from the air, nodded and bowed, and smiled at everyone present, without the arrogant attitude of a god looking down on the world before entering Hongfu Mountain. However, not many people present gave him a good face, most of them sneered, and some even turned their heads away. Seeing this situation, Yoshino Yukio's face changed slightly, but recovered in an instant, and put on a more humble look again, and kept smiling and greeting everyone. But in his heart, Yoshino Yukio was roaring madly, "How could you do this to me? You all just wait for me. Yoshino Yukio, because of your arrogance and ignorance, millions of people on Dongdaeho died, countless people were displaced, and countless losses were incurred. So, now the Pan-Human Alliance has decided to deprive you of your official position on the list of gods and send you back to Dongdaeho to be punished." Just as Yoshino Yukio was constantly cursing viciously in his heart, Xuanhuan, who was sitting at the top, looked coldly at Yoshino Yukio who was groveling below, and said in a calm tone, "Ah." Hearing Xuanhuan's words, Yoshino Yukio looked up slightly in a daze, looking at Xuanhuan above with a cold expression, his body trembled slightly, and he was a little panicked in an instant, and was a little at a loss for a while. "No. You can't do this to me." However, Yoshino Yukio quickly came to his senses, knelt down in panic, and immediately begged for mercy loudly. Unfortunately, Ren Huang did not intend to continue listening to his nonsense, but waved his hand directly, and the conferred god list immediately shone with divine light again, and Yoshino Yukio's name shone on it. Gradually, Yoshino Yukio's name gradually separated from the conferred god list and turned into a dazzling spiritual light ball. After a slight rotation in place, it turned into a mysterious light and shot towards Yoshino Yukio's forehead. That was Yoshino Yukio's spiritual will, soul vitality, etc., all of which were forcibly condensed into a little true spirit under the power of the conferred god list. As long as his little true spirit is not destroyed, he can continue to be reborn through the conferred god list. The true spirit entered his brain and instantly sank into his soul and dispersed, which slightly strengthened his soul. At the same time, it also made Yoshino Yukio's mind clear, and his perception of the world became more acute. However, at this time, Yoshino Yukio did not want to get such an enhancement. Because this means that his true spirit, which was deposited on the investiture of the gods list, has been stripped away, and there is no way to be reborn by relying on the investiture of the gods list. At the moment when the true spirit returned to its place, a little divine light rose from its mind. Endless rules and divine light were all extracted from Yoshino Yukio's body and finally put into the investiture of the gods list. That was the official position conferred by the investiture of the gods list, which was taken back by the investiture of the gods list again, which meant that his official position and all the magical powers granted by the official position were deprived. However, his body, which was much stronger than that of ordinary people through the baptism of divine power, and his cultivation insights and progress during this period were not deprived together. Seeing Yoshino Yukio, who was deprived of his official position, his aura dropped instantly, and he looked a little depressed. Everyone present was shocked. Only then did they remember that even if they became an official in the Pan-Human Federation, their true spirits were on the investiture of the gods list and had the blessing of the official position of the investiture of the gods list. But it does not mean that they will be able to rest easy in the future. If they fail to do their part, they may be dismissed from their official positions and deprived of the official positions granted by the list of gods. Moreover, it seems that being deprived of official positions is very uncomfortable. It is also true that the gods who originally mastered the great power of Tongtian have become ordinary mortals. Whether physically or mentally, they will inevitably feel a great sense of gap. It is also normal to appear a little depressed for a while. Fortunately, his body that has been baptized by divine power is still far stronger than ordinary people, which finally gives everyone a little comfort. Even if they want to resign from their official positions later, they will not be in vain. Whether it is the body baptized by divine power, or the various cultivation points they have comprehended, or even the strength they have improved in this process, they can still be perfectly maintained. Of course, if it is not necessary, no one will be willing to lose their official position for no reason. Looking at Yoshino Yukio now, he looks depressed and like a dog without a home, which everyone does not want to experience. So for a while, the original idea of living a lazy life faded a lot, and they thought about whether they could allocate some energy from the area where their power was located to do something for the Pan-Human Alliance. Yoshino Yukio looked up with a depressed face and looked at Ren Huang sitting in the first seat, with a flash of resentment in the depths of his eyes. However, in a flash, the resentment in Yoshino Yukio's eyes had completely disappeared, and he turned into a pleading look, hoping to get Ren Huang's forgiveness and return to the conferred god list. General Director. Without paying any attention to Yoshino Yukio's words of begging for mercy, or his resentment, Ren Huang just waved his hand lightly, and Yoshino Yukio's figure disappeared in an instant. Looking at Yoshino Yukio kneeling on the ground in front of him, Jiro Koizumi, the director of Higashima who was in charge of Higashima affairs, had a complex thing flash in his eyes, but suddenly became abnormally cold. Although Yoshino Yukio's actions were promoted and condoned by him. However, someone must be responsible for the millions of people who died in Higashima. And this person is naturally the most suitable Yoshino Yukio. Anyway, This matter has nothing to do with him, but Yoshino Yukio's personal behavior. In an instant, a deep cold spread, and Yoshino Yukio, who had not yet fully awakened from the dizzy state of transmission, turned into a kneeling ice sculpture in an instant, losing all his life. And at this moment, there was a sudden violent shaking in the room where he was. Crash! The ice sculpture that Yoshino Yukio had transformed into was instantly shattered by the violent vibration. The colorful ice debris suddenly covered the ground, and under the sunlight, it flashed a gorgeous and strange light. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 302. Huh. Koizumi Jiro frowned slightly and glanced at the ice debris on the ground. The huge divine power in his body immediately surged out of his body. It only fluctuated slightly for a moment, and then it was completely annihilated into nothingness. Read. Immediately afterwards, Koizumi Erlang raised his head and looked in the direction of Hongfu Mountain through the perspective of the power of the conferred god list. At this moment, there is no Hongfu Mountain left, only a large deep pit is left in place, and streams of magma are gurgling out of the earth. And under this situation, the people who lived under Hongfu Mountain because of their fanatical belief in Yamata no Orokai, needless to say, have long been turned into fly ash, and their bodies and spirits have completely disappeared. However, no one paid any attention to the physical deaths of these people. For these humans who fanatically believe in gods, especially those who believe in evil gods and evil gods, in the eyes of the Pan-Human Alliance government, it would be better if they all died. And Yamata no Orokai, in the eyes of everyone, is obviously not a good god. Similarly, Yamata no Orokai didn't care about them. He never paid attention to these so-called fanatical believers. He just regarded them as toys for fun when he was bored. And when necessary, it can be used as food to satisfy the appetite. Well, since you believe in me so much, then integrate with me and become a part of me. The terrifying shockwave hit the ground, not only directly erasing the existence of Hongfu Mountain, but also creating a large crater like a small lake where Hongfu Mountain was originally located. Even the entire East Island shook violently under the impact of the shockwave, and buildings collapsed. How much property will be lost this time? Fortunately, today's human beings can be considered to have achieved success in spiritual practice, and at least most earthquakes and other disasters can be avoided without risk. Therefore, this earthquake did not cause many deaths. Only. Seeing that the attack was ineffective, the giant god condensed by the formation turned the double-edged giant axe and drew a mysterious trajectory, breaking through the layers of space and slashing at Yamata no Orokai again. Similarly, the Yamata no Orokai was not to be outdone. He twisted his body in the same way and released boundless thunder from one head, slashing towards the giant axe. The remaining heads also used various magical powers to attack the giant from different directions and angles. Moreover, Yamata no Orokai's extremely huge snake tail, like a steel pillar reaching the sky, was also thrown out fiercely at the same time. After images flashed, breaking through the layers of space, and directly swept towards the legs of the giant god. Facing the ferocious attack of Yamata no Orokai, the giant god did not panic at all. He just raised his foot and stepped on it, and a thick black and yellow light rose up, wrapping his whole body tightly. At the same time, the entire East Island's rules of heaven and earth shook slightly, blooming with a faint brilliance, connected with the black and yellow light. Boom boom boom. The next moment, the sound of rumbling explosions could be heard endlessly, and the black and yellow light on the giant's body continued to flash with ripples of brilliance. He was doing his best to quickly remove the attack of the Yamata no Orokai. However, Yamata no Orokai's nearly all-out attack could not be followed so easily. The ripples of the dark yellow light rippled faster and faster, with faint signs of fragmentation. However, the rules of heaven and earth connected to it vibrated in an instant, transmitting the attack power of Yamata no Orokai evenly to the entire East Island, and using the rules of heaven and earth of the entire East Island to offset it. Correspondingly, because it was an attack offset by the rules of the East Island world. Therefore, it is inevitable that the entire East Island is in a violent shock, and buildings one after another begin to collapse. On the other hand, the mountains and rivers that collapsed eastward did not suffer much damage because the rules of heaven and earth were fully activated. They were just shaking violently. The human beings among them did not suffer much harm because of their practice, but only lost some property. Regarding the situation on the East Island, neither the Yamata no Orokai nor the sky-reaching giant paid attention to it. Facing a being of almost the same level, no matter who it is impossible for him to be distracted in such a fierce battle. Without the help of the rules of heaven and earth of the entire East Island, the giant god would not be able to block the attack of Yamata no Orokai. On the other hand, the Yamata no Orokai's full blow is only half as good as the giant. How can this kind of person use only one head to resist the giant's attack? How can it be the giant's opponent? Boom! Click! After another explosion, the double-edged giant axe in the giant's hand directly split the Yamata no Orokai's thunder attack and struck directly on his head. With a loud cracking sound, it spread on his head, and with another force from the giant god, his head was completely cut open. As the rules flowed, the double-edged axe continuously poured into the head of the Yamata no Orokai, destroying its most fundamental core. Bang! With a loud noise, the head of Yamata no Orokai exploded directly, turning into fragments carrying the divinity and power of thunder in the sky, and fell to the earth below one after another, and there were many fragments. In the process it has already melted away and merged into the void. If nothing unexpected happens, this small piece of heaven and earth will become a holy place for practicing thunder skills and methods in the future. Hiss ouch! A broken head was not fatal to Yamata no Orokai, but the pain of having his head chopped off went straight into the depths of his soul, causing him to scream in pain and his body to twist and twitch. However, as his head was broken, his aura did not drop, but instead suddenly began to rise sharply. In just a moment, it surged by more than double, and the twisting and rolling snake body broke through layers of space and smashed out dark space cracks. Facing such a violent Yamata no Orokai, even the giant god frowned slightly, feeling that he had nowhere to start. Suddenly, the Yamata no Orokai, which was originally rolling and twisting, suddenly swung out its tail, directly pulling out a dark space crack, carrying the power that had surged to 3 times the original, and fiercely blasted towards the hesitant giant god, with a violent and terrifying aura. Heh! The giant chuckled. They were not afraid of a head-on battle. Their real strength, although blessed by the conferred god list, was not inferior to that of ordinary gods. But compared to the Yamata no Orokai, a well-known god, they were still much inferior. They could only compete with it with the help of the military formation and cut off one of its heads. But that was not their real strength after all. In the delicate manipulation, there would inevitably be some lag. Therefore, for the kind of battle that required flexible skills, they would inevitably fall behind and be inferior. On the contrary, in this kind of head-on battle, they might not be inferior at all, and they might even be slightly stronger. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 303. Shua. The giant axe was unfurled, and under the control of the giant god, it chopped towards the tail of the Yamata no Orokai. Read. Bang. Dang. Accompanied by a loud noise, the giant axe chopped fiercely on the tail of the Yamata no Orokai. However, this time, it did not play the role it should have. The axe with terrifying power seemed to have chopped on the divine iron. It only splashed countless sparks on it, causing ripples in the surrounding space, but did not hurt the Yamata no Orokai at all. Even under its violent power, it stepped back several steps, stepping out dark space holes in the void. The body of this Yamata no Orokai is really hard. Hey? How did the body of this Yamata no Orokai become so hard? Didn't he just have his head chopped off? How come he can now confront the giant axe head on? He even directly repelled the gods that formed the formation. Although we can't sense their strength. But just now, the strength of the Yamata no Orokai seemed to have skyrocketed. Hey! It seems to be true, but how is it possible? He has had his head chopped off, but not only has his strength not decreased, but his strength has skyrocketed. Not only did he not understand what was going on, but others also didn't understand what was going on. Maybe he performed some kind of secret method. At the headquarters of the Pan-Human Alliance, someone couldn't help but express his guess. Indeed, there is a great possibility that this is the case. That is to say, as long as we can hold on for a while longer, we will be able to drag down the Yamata no Orokai. I don't think it's that simple. After all, they are all real gods, and they have been in this realm for many years. It is normal for them to have some unknown cards. Xuanhuan, who was sitting at the top, shook his head. He did not think that the Yamata no Orokai had used some secret method that could drag him down. Instead, he thought that this should be a normal secret technique. What humans saw, and the many gods who were also paying attention to this battle, naturally took it in. After seeing this scene, they all breathed a sigh of relief, and some gods couldn't help but show disdain on their faces. Is this the human's trump card? Are we going to punish Yamata no Orokai like this? I think this time, not only will humans fail to punish Yamata no Orokai, but they may also lose this elite unit. If humans fail to achieve their desired goal in establishing their power this time, I'm afraid Blue Planet will be in complete chaos. Killing a chicken to scare the monkey, I'm afraid the monkey will kill them this time. Just as many humans watching the live broadcast were constantly lamenting the sudden surge in Yamata no Orokai's strength, and were worried about that unit, and many gods were constantly mocking. The giant god who was shaken by Yamata no Orokai and took several steps, just stood firm, and pointed to the halo behind his head, and a low shout came from his mouth. The conferred god list, the power of humanity is blessing. Instantly, the halo behind his head burst into a more dazzling divine light, and a more powerful power of humanity descended and directly blessed the giant god, causing his strength to suddenly increase by a large margin. Ha! With a loud shout, the giant god chopped down again with an axe, as if it was the creation of the world, directly splitting the layers of space in front of him, and chopped down the head of the Yamata no Orokai that was attacking. Boom! Crack shot! This time, the giant god did not retreat again, nor did he fight to the same weight, but directly broke through the layers of attacks and directly cut off another head of the Yamata no Orokai. This sudden reversal made everyone who paid attention here stunned again, and for a while, they were a little unable to react. This is too fierce. I thought we were going to lose just now. As expected of the elite troops of our great Shenzhou. Waste. This Yamata no Orokai is really waste. While Shenzhou and the Pan-Human Alliance were cheering, there were also gods frowning and very dissatisfied. However, in the next moment, the momentum around Yamata no Orokai suddenly surged again, which immediately surprised everyone. Is there something? It seems that Yamata has hidden a lot. A god exclaimed in surprise and said with a sigh. Clang. After a sound of metal clashing, the two sides fought evenly again, but it was hard for the people on Dongdaeo. They were like being in a constantly vibrating dustpan, constantly vibrating up and down, and there was no way to stand steadily. Even those who could fly could not remain calm when flying in the air. Because the giant god was connected to the rules of the heaven and earth of the entire East Island, even if he was in mid-air, he would still be greatly affected by the vibration, flying crookedly, and completely unable to maintain balance. This time, the giant god did not wait until he retreated to draw the power of humanity through the list of conferred gods. Instead, after one strike, he pointed to the halo behind his head and drew down a vast force again. The aura of the towering giant god rose again, and he cut off another head of the Yamata no Orokai. Hiss roar. Yaki roared in pain again, and his aura rose again. They're not done yet. Everyone who saw this scene, whether it was the gods or the people of the Pan-Human Alliance, felt a little speechless. Are you competing to see who has more trump cards? Good man, this time and time again to improve strength, is it really endless? Can't it be used all at once? If he knew what everyone was thinking, Yamata no Orokai would definitely curse. He didn't know what the giant god transformed by the human battle formation was like. But he himself was definitely not unwilling to use all his strength at once. But the price of doing so was really too heavy. His repeated strength improvement was not some secret method or other means of practice, but a kind of innate ability of his. Just like what happened before, every time his head was cut off, his strength would be tripled. And there was no after effects, no side effects, which was extremely against the sky. If his cultivation realm truly reaches a limit and cannot be further advanced, then as long as his 8 heads are unified, he can rely on this unparalleled strong power to forcibly impact a higher realm. However, in each major realm, he only has one chance to generate 8 heads and integrate them into one. In this case, how could he easily perform such a method, which is his means to impact a higher realm in the future?